The Equal Rights Amendment was first proposed to the nation in 1923 as a way of putting an end to the societal inequalities between male and female.
Virginia was the 38th state to ratify. The deadline given in 1982 was not binding because gender equality should not have a deadline.
In 2020, we have all the states needed for ratification, but it is still not a constitutional amendment. The ongoing fight for equal rights is not associated with a political party or religious belief, but simply the fact that all men and women are created equal and deserve to be treated so.
Like a lot of people in my generation, I grew up assuming that sexism on an institutional level ended after women got the right to vote and started working outside of the home. In reality, sex discrimination still affects women today in major and harmful ways. In the workplace, in healthcare, and in cases of gender violence.
I have learned that because I'm a woman of color, I don't always receive the proper medical attention. I have learned that our U.S. Constitution does not protect women.
There is a gender equality issue in America. Compared to other countries, America ranked 53rd out of 153 in gender equality according to the World Economic Forum. The United States was actually ranked the 10th most dangerous country in the world for women.
There are upwards of 200 countries in this world, yet we are number 10.
168 constitutions in the world guarantee gender equality. Why can't the United States?
Discrimination against sex receives intermediate scrutiny under the law. However, other forms of discrimination, such as race, undergoes strict scrutiny. This illustrates the patriarchal norms we follow. Even though the ERA has been ratified, no progress or initiation has been made to include it in the Constitution. This is crucial to mention because cases under strict scrutiny have higher chances of winning. If our country is truly the most liberated on the earth, then how come we have had little to no progress in regards to this issue?
It seems like we're 100 years back. As the world becomes increasingly outspoken on social issues, we need to be talking about this just as much.
The ERA is important because it makes sure that women are being treated equally, and not just women, it's also trans women, it's also non-binary people.
The Equal Rights Amendment would provide broader protections for LGBT, POC, trans, and non-binary individuals such as myself. The ERA is now all-inclusive despite its white feminism origins. Some people argue that Title VII and 9 of the Civil Rights Act already provide enough protections against discrimination on the basis of sex and race. This isn't true because the legislation is actually very narrow and vague, and in most states, LGBT and trans people can still be fired for who they are or who they love. The ERA would effectively fight against patriarchy and white supremacy.
The reason I care about the ERA and why every single American should too is simply because its importance lies at the very basis of our rights. I find that not only do people overlook gender inequality in the Constitution, but they overlook it solely due to the fact that they don't even see it as an issue. However, those people are gravely mistaken.
Being a woman is hard. Being a woman with no ERA is even harder. The thing that has the most impact on me is what happens behind closed doors. To know that there are men hiring me that are more likely to go with a man solely because of gender. Discrimination complaints filed to the EEOC are filed for women being fired due to pregnancy.
Did you know within 10 days of having a baby, 1 in 4 women are back to work? The United States is one of 2 countries in the entire world who does not have a policy on paid maternity leave.
We also tied third with Syria for countries where women most risk sexual violence, harassment, and coercion into sex. The gender equality gap is not expected to naturally close in America for another 208 years. While most of us may never actually live to see true gender equality in our country, I believe that we can shorten that time span by bringing upon constitutional gender equality.
Growing up, my parents instilled in me from a young age that I must be an independent woman and to never rely on a man or anyone else for my successes. I am hopeful that as I continue to navigate through my college years and my potential career, the gender equality and protections under the law will increase.
So growing up, I lived with my single mother who while I was in elementary and middle school, was able to get her bachelor's and her master's degree. And while she was doing that, she started to look at jobs and she started to notice that she was being paid less than her male counterparts, and it really discouraged her. And as I got older, I started to realize that this was a systematic problem.
I grew up with 3 older sisters, and I have seen one after the other be discriminated against based on their gender identity. My sisters taught me growing up how I would get older and I would be catcalled out in the streets for wearing possibly more revealing outfits, or just in general outfits that fit to my body type and my body shape, and I would be called out for that. My sisters taught me that I should be more submissive in public situations because you never know what people are capable of. This was the fear that I grew up in, and I still grow up in. No girl or woman should ever have to worry about going out into public and fearing for her life, fearing violence to come on to them.
Imagine the constant fear instilled in women and girls across this country. Not only are we faced with this physical danger, but also the mental and emotional turmoil that comes with living with such inequalities. We are scared, and we're tired of being scared. I'm tired of being afraid to walk to my car alone without a pair of keys in my hand. I'm tired of having to tell people the story of how a man only backed off from me after my male coworker physically stepped in between us to protect me. I'm tired of having to laugh off the unwarranted comments and innuendos I face every time I go to work. And most of all, I'm tired of only being able to prove my point to people after I explain these stories.
And I started to get worried for my future. And it wasn't until this year that I got involved with the ERA to try and make a difference, not only for women like myself, but for younger girls like my niece who are growing up and the generation below me, to make sure that they have a good future too.
The word woman is tied to negative connotations such as overly sensitive, uncontrollable, and even weak. It is imperative that the word woman is turned around. This is so I and other women can have a better future.
Had an equal rights amendment been in place, stories like these would dramatically decrease. Justice would have been served and people would have been held accountable. We need an amendment in place to protect the identities and livelihoods of all genders across the nation. We need to live in a world knowing that we are safe and equal.
We need to be electing officials who will work and fight to combat sexism in the workplace, the wage gap, discrimination, violence against women, and all around the displacement of women in our society. The 28th Amendment promises to do just that. It would be the legal basis to combat sexism through the laws and courts of the country, and it would spur many other protection laws, like regarding genital mutilation and human trafficking. It's disgusting that things like that still happen today. So, what's stopping you from supporting?
Just a few weeks ago, my only living grandmother passed away after a courageous battle with Alzheimer's. Upon her passing, I promised myself that she had to be the last generation of women to live and die without guaranteed gender equality in this country. Not only was she a woman and lived with the discrimination that her gender imposed upon her, but she was also a Black woman. As a Black woman, she was excluded from many of the gender equality movements of her generation, but that is no longer the case. Acknowledging the history of the ERA, the 20th Amendment is inclusive of all women and reflects the needs of all of us. I sit here as a granddaughter of Rosetta, a woman who had to fight for her own right to vote, and I cannot wait to use my vote to vote equality.
I am a proud Latina woman, and one of the ways I show my pride is by supporting the 28th Amendment.
It is important that everyone registers to vote for this upcoming election so we can put an end to gender discrimination.
We need to vote equality to get the 28th Amendment added to the Constitution.
You need to show your support by learning more about the Equal Rights Amendment and sharing it with those around you. Visit voteequality.us to learn more.
To help get the 28th Amendment into our Constitution, volunteer to help and spread the word that constitutional gender equality still doesn't exist in the US, but is as necessary as ever.
We as a country cannot continue to succumb to injustice that our people face. Our power is in our unity.